Welcome to Front Office Pros. Today, we're going to be going through our top 40 wide receiver rankings and tiers. For this episode, you're going to be hearing Steve's and Joe's. You're getting two for the price of one for this episode, and it's going to be exciting.
Hike!
Because honestly, if you think about it, running backs and wide receivers are way more exciting than quarterbacks and tight ends. I mean, we enjoy doing those as well. But this is where the rubber meets the road. Am I right, Joe?
100%, Steve. There's only so many different variations of the quarterbacks and tight ends that we can possibly do. Pretty much everyone knows which ones are the best and more fantasy relevant than the others.
So let's talk about tier number one. Who do you got there?
All right, in tier number one, at number one spot, I've got Tyreek Hill. Number two, CeeDee Lamb. Number three, Amon-Ra St. Brown. And at number four, Ja'Marr Chase.
So for me, I've got number one, CeeDee Lamb, two, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and then three, Tyreek Hill. I got to tell you, I'm really surprised that you and I are so similar because I feel like a lot of times when it comes to wide receivers, maybe more so than any other position, I feel like we have quite a bit of disagreements, but we're right on the fairway on this one.
Well, I can't believe you have St. Brown at the number two spot. That was surprising to me. I know that you haven't always been the biggest St. Brown supporter, but I guess you see the volume there with the lack of other, wide receiver depth there.
I mean, he was a former fourth-round pick.
Well, hey, but he remembers all those other receivers taken before him, and that motivates him to do even better on game day.
I only said that to try to goat you. It didn't work, unfortunately. I was hoping to.
You're hoping for me to say, it doesn't matter what they get drafted.
Oh yeah. I was ready. You were ready for my trap. You did good. But I mean, here's the thing, Joe. I mean, look at that Detroit Lions offense. I mean, he just it runs through Amon-Ra. I mean, I know you've got Laporta and Gibbs, but I mean, Jameson Williams hasn't proven anything to this point, in my opinion. I want him to be good. I thought he could be good. He hasn't shown. He's shown flashes, not very many. So to me, it's just like volume is king, and he's going to get a ton of it.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, Amon-Ra St. Brown is what makes that offense tick. I mean, if you watch the Netflix series, The Receiver, and what they circle around Amon-Ra St. Brown, you just see how much Dan Campbell loves this guy. I mean, and he highlights him and specifically notes like how he goes in there and blocks. I mean, he just loves everything about the way he plays, and so excited when he got paid as well. So the offense really just revolves around him, and like you said, the volume will be there.
Now, what made you put Tyreek Hill number one, being that you like Amon-Ra St. Brown so much, or even CeeDee Lamb? I understand Tyreek Hill being in this tier one, but he's not getting any younger.
Yeah, that really just hasn't seemed to matter though, and he's still the alpha on the Miami Dolphins, and Tua led the league in passing last year as well, and this guy is just motivated to try to get to that 2,000-yard mark. He's gotten over 1,700 yards. I just don't see much changing for Tyreek Hill.
You don't think Waddle? I mean, Waddle had a down year last year. You don't think that Waddle could kind of chip away at some of the total pie of the yards available?
He definitely could if he's able to stay, healthy. And I think that's a big question. I mean, you already see he had a non-contact jersey on in practice just today. So I think injuries are still kind of a concern for him. But no doubt. But I also think that with this Miami offense, I mean, there's not really number three. They don't utilize the tight end position. I think there's plenty of targets to go around for both of these wide receivers to eat.
Joe, so let's head over to tier number two. Who do you got there?
All right. In tier two at number 5, I've got Justin Jefferson. Number 6, Garrett Wilson. Number 7, Puka Nacua. 8, A.J. Brown. 9, Drake London. And number 10, Marvin Harrison Jr.
Yep, so for me at number 4, I've got Garrett Wilson. 5, Puka Nacua. 6, Justin Jefferson. 7, Ja'Marr Chase. And 8, Marvin Harrison Jr. I got to tell you, Joe, so far you and I are not that much different.
Yeah, I mean, that's not too surprising. I think once we get outside of the top 10, I think that's where we'll start seeing some differences. But I think it's, pretty for the most part, it's the top 10 receivers are the kind of who they are.
I'm really high on Garrett Wilson this year. And I got to tell you, I have him at 4. I think he has a potential of being even better. than 4, depending on Aaron Rodgers' health. I mean, you got to remember back when it was the Devontae Adams show with him and with Aaron Rodgers and Adams in Green Bay. Adams, was getting 1 year he had 1,374 receiving yards and 18 touchdowns. The other year he had 1,553 yards with 11 touchdowns. So, I mean that was in their heyday when Aaron Rodgers was there. So at this point, in my view, I would view Garrett Wilson in a similar vein that I would Devontae Adams, in that he is the main guy. He's going to be the main recipient of all the targets that are at the disposal there for the team. And when it comes down to it, I have Garrett Wilson, in my view, kind of almost being a little bit. I mean, I have him getting 1,300 yards, 1,327 yards, 99 catches, and 11 touchdowns, which is a good season. But we saw what, Devontae Adams is able to do. If he gets 13, 14 touchdowns, Garrett Wilson could easily be the number 1 receiver on the year.
Yeah, if he's able to get that touchdown total, I mean, he definitely has the opportunity. The only thing that scares me with Garrett Wilson is, like you mentioned, the health of Aaron Rodgers and coming off of the torn Achilles injury. You want to talk about a guy that's not getting any younger. It's Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, but he's taking his time. He's been going in the dark and doing his things, and taking all his psychedelics. He's ready to go.
Yeah. So I know you like Mike Williams. You're not concerned about him taking away any touchdowns away from Garrett Wilson?
I have Mike Williams playing 12 games and him getting 7 touchdowns.
Okay, so you just think the wide receiver room there is going to get a lot of touchdowns.
I do, because I don't think he doesn't, because Aaron Rodgers doesn't use Conklin or the tight end. I don't see it happening. I only have Rodgers. He's throwing for 27 touchdowns. I mean, that's not crazy. I mean, he's thrown for way more.
Yeah. I mean, I've got him thrown for 32, so that just goes to show
there
you.
you go. Which, again, but in my mind, if he's throwing for 32, who's going to be getting those touchdowns? I would say it's Garrett Wilson.
Yeah. I mean, 10 of them I got to Garrett Wilson, so.
Yeah, so you just have it be a little bit more dispersed.
Correct, yeah. Where you've got it more so Garrett Wilson heavy, which I could definitely see.
Now, you've got Chase at 4. I've got Chase at 7. He's a guy I'm generally avoiding as far as this combo here. I think my main reason being is because I think that Bengals receiver room is honestly kind of crowded. I think that T. Higgins you've kind of convinced me. I think T. Higgins could have a resurgent year. You've got the Andre Yosefis, a second-year receiver that they're saying there is some excitement there. Jermaine Burton, the rookie. So there's a lot of people. Mike Gesicki now at tight end. There's probably, honestly, when it comes to weapons wise. Why are you laughing?
Mike Gesicki at tight end, man. Don't even worry about him. He's never heavily utilized.
Joe, I'm just saying that since Ja'Marr Chase has been there, this might be the most talented. I'm not talking about Mixon not being there, but I'm just talking about the receiving entities. Might be the most.
So you're disrespecting Tyler Boyd.
I think Tyler Boyd's good, but I'm just saying that you've got. Is
Yosefis really that much better?
I mean, they've talked quite a bit about him.
Right, I get that. He's getting buzz. I mean, he's a younger, exciting player. But I mean, look.
But you like Burton. Don't even give me that, because I know you like.
I do,
Burton.
But I mean, I think Burton. Yeah, he's flashed in the preseason, but that's also preseason. And guess what? Ja'Marr Chase hasn't been playing, so
right, which usually concerns you.
Yeah, but listen, I am concerned. The fact that he hasn't practiced, he hasn't been in football shape. I've got him, at least missing a game. I don't have him projected to play the full season because of that.
He can't stay healthy either,
No, I know. Yeah, he has issue with his back and whatnot. I get it. But Tyler Boyd's also been a part of this offense, and it hasn't stopped Ja'Marr Chase from being fine. And, I'm expecting Joe Burrow to actually be healthy this year. So
that's a big if too.
Well, look.
He's wearing that glove on his hand. It's kind of strange.
Well, you just stop. You just love buying into all these narratives and all these stupid beat reporters out there. These things are nothing burgers. Look, Joe Burrow is healthy. He didn't get nicked up in training camp or preseason. He's good to go. And I think it's all go. And I think Joe Burrow can support, multiple receivers in this offense.
I think I'm going back in my brain. I think I'm trying to recall someone who was saying that they weren't that concerned about a calf injury that some beat reporters were talking about, and that Joe Burrow will come back fine and be healthy and have no issues. Do you remember that at all?
Yeah, that was last year. I mean, it took him a few games to look like himself again, but ultimately then the wrist happened. So, it didn't. The
But
calf
no
definitely did
other
hamper him.
quarterback has ever had that type of injury,
Right. So
to my knowledge.
just shows you what a freak thing it was for him.
I know. So what if it's a freak thing that turns into a career ender?
Career ender. Stop it. Now you're just getting absolutely ridiculous here.
Well, let's head over to tier 3. What do you got there?
All right. And tier number 3 at number 11, I've got Rashee Rice. Number 12, Chris Olave. 13, Nico Collins. And 14, Debo Samuel.
All right, number 9, I've got Drake London. Number 10, DJ Moore. 11, AJ Brown. 12, DK Metcalf. 13, Chris Olave. And 14, Terry McLaurin. Just like you said, Joe, this is where you and I are going to start to differ here. Now, you've got Rashee Rice very high. I would say probably you're maybe the most bullish that I've seen. And I think part of the reason why, because I know, since we've talked, is you don't believe he'll be suspended, and so he'll continue to do what he did last year.
Correct. Yeah. I think he's going to play the full 17 games, and he cemented himself as the wide receiver 1 for the Kansas City Chiefs offense. And he's got Patrick Mahomes throwing him the ball. And from what I've seen in preseason, like, this guy's still going to be the target monster that he, finished the strong last year.
But, I mean, couldn't you say that the receiver room is a little bit more contested than last year? I
It
mean,
is, but
you got Marquise Hollywood Brown, he'll be coming back from his injury. You've got Xavier Worthy. Now you got Juju Smith-Schuster coming back.
Juju, get out of here. That guy's irrelevant. He was a nothing burger when he was with the Chiefs not that long ago. He'll be a nothing burger again.
Oh boy, I think Rashee Rice could be good. I'll be hearing about it. I'll be talking about him recently. I don't think that I don't think you're wrong for having him here. I think that Xavier Worthy, especially. But I think there are other options. I mean, even Kelsey had a down year as far as Kelsey numbers are concerned. So I don't know. There's a lot of mouths to feed there.
It is. I mean, there's not that many mouths to feed. Let's face it. I think it's really just Rashee Rice and Travis Kelce. Hollywood Brown, he's recovering from this injury. He's so small. He's probably going to get hurt again. He's another guy that just can't stay healthy. And they've got even a smaller player in Worthy. And if he can't run past people, he's just going to get beat up as well. So I am really not concerned about these other options. And I've got, Rashee Rice, sure. I've got him ranked at his absolute ceiling. And we'll see at the end of the day if he can reach it.
Now, you have Chris Olave. I have Chris Olave. Basically right around the same spot. You have one spot higher than I do. You seem to be a guy that you target a lot in drafts, from what I've at least seen from you.
I don't know if I target him a lot.
You target him a lot in the mocks. I've been in a draft with you. You went and said you want Olave. So, you seem to be, this is a guy, he's a target of yours.
He wasn't a target. I mean, that last draft, I was not targeting Chris Olave at all. It just so happened I got him at a decent value compared to the other receivers, and I think he's got the top 10 potential. And honestly, I like the value in that draft. I mean, I wasn't going in there. I got to get Olave. He's not like my guy.
One of the guy that I think people will be surprised about for me is Terry McLaurin being in this tier. I just really believe that he will take that next step. I know that and this is where I feel like you got to be careful. And this is, my soapbox last year that I couldn't express enough. People were like, well, especially you and others, you can't draft a rookie tight end because rookie tight ends, they don't do good in their first year, blah, 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 blah. Well, that obviously was a nothing burger, as you've liked to said a few times this episode, because the rookie tight ends made a huge impact. So I know, some will say that, hey, if you look at it, when it was a rookie quarterback, it doesn't really bode well for the receivers that they're going to have a huge statistical season. In my view, I think McLaurin's in for it, though. And so I would say, even though the stats would tell you otherwise, who does Jaden Daniels have to throw the ball to? I mean, they traded John Dotson, probably the guy that maybe you and I had been even pounding the table for, that was kind of an interesting player back in Penn State, former first-round pick. But he's no longer there. You've got guys like Olamide Zaccheaus, who, he's never really panned out where he's went. Dyami Brown, we've been waiting for him to blossom. It's been years. They got Luke McCaffrey. They got Austin Eckler, but he's a little older. I mean, to me, McLaurin, he's done so well with basically bottom of the barrel quarterback play. So if Jaden Daniels, if you're a believer in Jaden Daniels and you think he could be a good player, and I don't know if he'll be a great NFL quarterback, but from a fantasy standpoint, I think he's gonna be quite good. He's supported. I mean, if you look, he allowed Malik Neighbors and especially Brian Thomas, who really was, came out of nowhere. Both of those guys, they succeeded, I think, a lot due to the fact of how good Jaden Daniels was. Now, I mind you, it was college at LSU, but I'm a big believer in McLaurin.
Yeah, I mean, the path is definitely there. I like McLaurin as well. I'll be talking about him very shortly here. You just happen to be a little bit more bullish on him than I am. But there's no doubt, you mentioned it. I mean, Dyami Brown and the other receivers that are potentially there. I mean, he is the alpha. He's the wide receiver one. And in the preseason games, it seems like him and Jaden Daniels have quite a good rapport as well. So I think McLaurin should have a good season. He's finally got a good quarterback, and I think unlike Sam Howell last year spread around the ball so much, it was hard to get the wide receivers the stats. I think Daniels could just solely target in on McLaurin and see more volume. I think Dyami Brown should be better as well. I think he's not afraid to take those deep shots in the field. We've seen that in the preseason as well. But he's just not the guy that's going to get a ton of volume like McLaurin.
Are you enjoying this episode so far? Well, if you are, subscribe to our YouTube channel, smash that like button, and hit the notification bell for upcoming videos. We do videos throughout the year, so you're not going to want to miss what we have in store. All right, Joe, let's head over to tier number 4. What do you got there?
All right, in tier number 4, I've got at 15, I've got the old reliable Mike Evans, 16, Terry McLaurin, 17, DJ Moore, 18, Jalen Waddle, and at 19, Devonta Smith.
Number 15, I got Nico Collins, 16, Brandon Ayuk, 17, Rashee Rice, 18, Mike Evans, 19, George Pickens, and then 20, Devonta Smith. Devonta Smith now is a guy who he's a guy I'm interested in, and I'm sort of targeting because I think, based on Kellen Moore's offense, they use a lot more motion from what I understand from those who really, look at the tape and what have you. And that's partially why I have A.J. Brown a little bit lower in my rankings, because I actually think that Devonta Smith, could take away some of that volume personally. And I think that there are some other options on that offense. I think A.J. Brown will still do good. I have him high. But I think this could be Devonta Smith's year. I think he could really break out.
That's interesting. I mean, they can motion A.J. Brown as well, right?
No, I understand that, but I mean, I believe that they're going to be using Devonta Smith most likely in the slot, unless maybe they're going to put Jahan Dotson there. But I think more than likely they're going to probably use Devonta Smith, and I think as a result, I really like the opportunity for Devonta Smith.
Yeah, Devonta Smith, man, he's a tough guy. Like, I understand he gets his stats, but he's a tough guy for me to like and actually go forth and draft. Obviously
he's kind of a Noah.
Yeah, AJ Brown is the alpha. He's the exciting player. He is the one. I don't know if I buy too much that Devonta Smith is going to eat into his production. And if anything, like Devonta Smith does best when Dallas Goedert's not involved. If you want to talk about anything from Kellen Moore, he likes the tight ends usually do well. They target the tight end position, and if Goedert's healthy, he's going to get targets, which would mean a bad thing for Devonta Smith, in my opinion.
Now, one guy I think you're a little low on is DJ Moore. I mean, DJ Moore has proven time and time again that he's been a great receiver. It's interesting because a lot of people are talking about the Houston Texans receiving trio there with Tank Dell, Nico Collins, and Stephon Diggs. But you also have kind of an interesting trio going on in Chicago with DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, and Rome Odunze. So is that sort of the rationale behind having DJ Moore a little bit lower? I mean, obviously you've got Nico up at 13 as I'm comparing the Houston and Chicago receiving cores.
Yeah, I just I do like DJ Moore. I just think it's hard to bet on one of them. And honestly, Keenan Allen is there, Roma Dunze, and Roma Dunze and Caleb Williams seem to have a decent rapport. I think the big difference for me is I trust CJ Stroud to keep the production levels of Nico Collins and Tank Dell. Caleb Williams coming in as a rookie, I don't know how many receivers he can support. So I
If
think
any.
that's also why it takes a slight dip there, and we just haven't seen it. And I think just being able to see what Stroud did last year, and if he's able to just continue that success into this year, that's why I'm more excited about the Houston receiving core than I am the Bears.
So let's head over to tier number 5. What do you got there?
All right, in tier 5 at 20, I've got Christian Kirk, 21, DK Metcalf, 22, Malik Neighbors, and at 23, T. Higgins.
All right, so for me at 21, I've got Devontae Adams, 22, Deebo Samuel, 23, Christian Kirk, 24, Michael Pittman, and then 25, Amari Cooper. I got to tell you, you might be surprised by this, Joe. Deebo Samuel is a guy I actually thought I would be a little bit higher on. I am a little bit
Disappointed
higher.
that you got Brandon Ayuk rated ahead of him.
Why is that?
Deepo's the better guy.
Not according to last year.
Well, I mean, Ayuk played more games. I mean, Debo's the higher ceiling player.
You didn't think that at one point. You thought he was just a decoy at one point.
Yeah, at one point I did, but I mean, just watching the games, I mean, and just seeing, look, when Deebo Samuel was not there, the offense absolutely sucked. And when he's in there, he just makes that whole offense go. And without it, even Ayuk doesn't do as well as he does.
I think for me, it's just how many games does the guy play. That is the main reason why he's where he's at.
Yeah, I mean, which is fair. I mean, that is the one concern with him. He really plays tough physical and leads to injuries.
Yeah, I mean, I have Brandon Ayuk playing 16 games, and I have Deebo Samuel playing 15, but I have Deebo Samuel scoring a higher average than Brandon Ayuk.
That makes sense.
So I mean, I was surprised that I didn't have him higher. I even considered him possibly as a my guy. We're not going to be talking about that into the future, but to me, I think that you're right in the fact that they need him for that offense, or that engine's gonna start to shut down. So he's the engine. He's the thing that makes that thing cook. Now, one guy I can't wrap my brain around this, so I need you to explain it. I think you are way too low on DK. Yeah, you've never been a DK guy. But you're never a DK guy. I like DK. You don't. But right. I don't understand why. Why do you have him so low?
I mean, he just doesn't excite me. I mean, I even have him playing 17 games. I just got him average, 13.2 points a game. And honestly, I know you're excited about, Grubbs coming over from Washington and what the Seattle.
How could you not be excited about Grubb?
I mean, I get it. The Seahawks offense could be better, but at the end of the day, I think part of it is I just don't trust Geno Smith, and I'm not that high on him. And obviously, wide receiver is a quarterback dependent position, so I don't know. It's hard for me to get behind DK Metcalf. He's been an ultra consistent wide receiver, but he's also a guy that just hasn't always finished that well for fantasy either.
I mean, he's basically a lock for 8 to 10 touchdowns, and he gets, over 1,000 yards every year. What's not to like?
Well, I think part of it is too. I'm expecting him more emergence at a, JSN. So who knows if that takes away some of those targets from DK Metcalf. And DK Metcalf, he didn't even lead the team in targets last year. I mean, Tyler Lockett did. So I don't know. It's hard for me to rank a guy that doesn't lead the team in targets. And I get he's
It was
still
2 targets, Joe. That's a misleading thing to say.
Hey,
2 targets.
Did I say anything incorrect? Did he not? Did he lead the team in targets or not?
That's word fencing. You're just trying to prove a point, but it's 2 targets.
That's the whole point of stats, man. I can twist them and turn them and use them for my argument. However you want.
That's convoluted.
That's how everyone does it, man. That's why stats don't tell the full story. And
well, then what you're saying is a bogus line.
Not really. It's still factual. Tyler Lockett led the team in targets.
How could you say that you shouldn't use data and that it just is used to manipulate, and then you're the one doing it?
Manipulated to support any argument that you want. That's my point.
So you're saying to take incorrect. You're saying you take it for a grain of salt.
Yeah, certain stuff, but I mean, still at the end of the day.
But not this one though.
Still at the end of the day, Steve,
please.
He did not lead the team in targets. So, and I get he still had his production. I don't know. I've never been that big of a DK guy. It's just hard for me to get behind somebody that I don't truly believe in. And I think he's just kind of meh.
Well, I'll be happy to have him. So why don't we head over to tier number 6?
All right. With that, in tier 6 at 24, I've got Michael Pittman, 25, Devontae Adams, 26, George Pickens, 27, Amari Cooper, 28, Deontay Johnson, and at 29, Brandon Ayuk.
All right, so at number 26, I've got Jaden Reed, 27, Malik Nabers, 28, Jalen Waddle, 29, Zay Flowers, 30, T. Higgins, and 31, Tank Dell.
So wait a second. So part of your argument was I should be concerned about Jalen Waddle taking things away from Tyreek Hill, but yet you've got Jalen Waddle ranked as your 28th best wide receiver. That's not that compelling of an argument, sir.
No. That's not my argument. I'm just asking. It was a fictitious question as to what are you concerned about? Not that I'm saying that I still have Tyreek Hill number 3. I don't think you can trust Jalen Waddle. Guy can't stay healthy, and I truly thought when I did projections last year, there was a part of me that thought Jalen Waddle was going to outpace Tyreek Hill. I thought he was going to essentially lap him last year. I was really wrong about it, and now I'm not going to do that again. Obviously, he's there. It's not. I thought it was 1A, 1B. Let's put it that way. It's clearly 1 and 2. It's a clear distinction. So at this point, no, I was just asking that for you to kind of give your thoughts on it. Does that concern you at all?
Okay, fair enough.
But as far as some other players here, you and I both have Malik Nabers. I have him lower than you. I've got him at 27. You've got him at 22. He's a guy who I think you and I both really like the talent. I just think that we're concerned about what's going on in New York with Daniel Jones. And I just think that right now the amount of money this guy's going for in auction leagues is just not worth it.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I'm not fading him because of his talent. Honestly, I fade him because of his auction price and drafts. But then also, from what I've seen out of Daniel Jones, I just not excited. And once again, I thought, the Giants, if you truly believe in your guy and Daniel Jones, like I know they tried to make some adjustments to this offensive line, but it didn't look any better than last year in preseason, thus far. Maybe there's still time to gel in it to get better over time, but that's a huge thing. And then you get rid of Saquon Barkley because you're paying Daniel Jones all that money, and yet you're not going to provide this guy the extra time. And I get you get an ultra talented guy in Malik Nabers who can uncover, quickly, but Daniel Jones also has to be able to read it and see it faster and hit him as well.
Yeah, I could see some reminiscing moments of Odell Beckham on the sideline being irritated as all get out, and I could see probably a similar thing with Malik Nabers, because I think the guy will be, when you watch him, I think he'll be open in a lot of plays. They probably can't get him the ball, and he's going to get frustrated.
Yeah, I mean, from what I've seen in preseason, Evan Neal is still a freaking turnstile over there at right tackle.
All right, Joe. So let's. Actually, wait a minute. I do want to make one comment. I was going to head to tier 7, but then I said, wait a minute.
Wait a
What's
minute. All
going
right.
on with you and George Pickens? I
What about
thought
him?
you'd be higher on Pickens. You and I seem to be having consensus that he's going to take this next step. You have him at number 26, and I've got him at number 19. Quite a big difference.
Yeah, I think this just kind of falls back onto their quarterback situation. I know, I was excited about Russell Wilson being able to support him, but then just thinking back to last year and even what he was able to do with Cortland Sutton. Cortland Sutton had 10 touchdowns last year. He didn't even finish, in the top 12. So I think even if Pickens does see the volume and gets a similar amount of touchdowns, I think it just could be tough for him to finish because from what I've seen, the offensive line in Pittsburgh is not that great. Russell Wilson's still taking sacks, which you can't do that. Those are drive stallers. And the Steelers defense is good enough to where, I don't think they're going to be that urgent to like put a lot of points on the board either.
That's the one thing that gives me pause about the Steelers and George Pickens in particular is that offense could be somewhat anemic. And
That's
that's what concerns me. Although, I mean, you did see that Russell Wilson kind of brought Cortland Sutton back to life. So, I mean,
he did, but that's what I mean. Like even Cortland Sutton didn't finish that impressive, and he had 10 touchdowns. To me, if you get 10 touchdowns, that should at least make you a wide receiver one and a top 12 receiver.
yeah,
He
no,
didn't
you're not
even
wrong.
hit that, and the Broncos' offense was anemic with Russell Wilson, and that was with Sean Payton coaching him up, and he couldn't get the. I mean, sure, the stats were good. He didn't throw a lot of interceptions, and the touchdown to interception ratio was good, but the overall total points scored in the offense was pretty bad, and it was honestly. The offense was very up and down and sporadic.
So let's head over to tier number 7. What do you got there?
All right, in tier 7 and number 30, I've got Zay Flowers, 31, Tank Dell, 32, Chris Godwin, 33, Jackson Smith and Jigba, and 34, Christian Watson.
All right, so for me, I got 32, Chris Godwin, 33, Jackson Smith and Jigba, 34, Stephon Diggs, and 35, Calvin Ridley. So you and I both have Jackson Smith and Jigba in this tier. I really do believe, and I might be a little biased because he is on my dynasty team, but I think that Tyler Lockett is going to take a step back, and I do think this is the time for JSN to shine.
Yeah, it definitely seems that way. And, I know I don't always put too much stock in the preseason games, but it does definitely seem JSN is going to be a pivotal point of this offense. I've heard a lot about him during training camp as well. And I think it seems like with this Ben Grubbs offense, I think it fits him pretty well. And I do think, this could be the start of the drop off for Tyler Lockett.
Now, one thing I am very surprised about because I feel like we've talked about them quite a bit, which is usually not a team that people talk about. We talked about a lot about the Titans, on Calvin Ridley and DeAndre Hopkins, but you don't even have Calvin Ridley in your top 40.
I do not.
What makes you have that be that way?
I could take a look at it here.
Well, I know that you like Hopkins better, but then the thought was, well, Hopkins is going to be injured, and is he going to even be ready for week 1? Now they're saying that maybe he will be ready by week 1. So I think from that standpoint, I thought you and I were both kind of tracking that Calvin Ridley was going to be probably the best guy by default, but you don't even have him in your top 40.
No, he was very close. Honestly, he was 1 point away from being in my top 40. I just have, I even have DeAndre Hopkins outscoring him in less games. So that's ultimately, I think I just I'm higher on DeAndre Hopkins than Calvin Ridley. I don't know if I still think the down the field threat guy is going to be DeAndre Hopkins, and I get his age and everything else, but that's just what we saw with Will Levis last year, and it'll just be interesting to see how these guys are utilized. But I was just sticking with Levis just throwing it up to DeAndre Hopkins.
Now I probably shouldn't be surprised by this, but you also do not have Stephon Diggs in your top 40 either.
No.
Why is that?
Because I think he's the odd man out in this offense. I think it's really just going to be the Tank Dell and Nico Collins show. And I don't think, Stephon Diggs will get the volume to be that good of a fantasy receiver this year.
It's interesting. I mean, he might be kind of more of a decoy, but I tell you what, if that does happen, he's going to implode. I don't know why you trade for a guy like him who wants the volume. You saw him in his frustration. I mean, he wants to win ultimately, so maybe he doesn't care. But I also feel like he wants to be
Well,
involved.
we'll see about how much he wants to win and how much he wants to, get his production. Because I don't know if the production will be there for him, but I think the Texans will win games.
Oh yeah, I mean they're one of the better teams in the NFL.
Yeah, so
which is remarkable. You think about it. I mean, rookie year with Stroud, rookie head coach. Before that, they were the laughing stock of the NFL. With David Culley as the head coach and then Lovie Smith as the head coach. I mean, they were a dumpster fire.
Yeah, I mean, just what DeMeco Ryans has been able to do and build that culture and get them to believing the winning culture. And then CJ Stroud, just a great leader. He was that for the Buckeyes as well. So it just was a good marriage there. And when you hit on your draft picks, your team does well.
All right, Joe, let's close it out. Who do you got in tier number 8?
All right, in tier number 8 at 35, I've got Rome Odunze. 36, Courtland Sutton. 37, Adam Thielen. 38, Cooper Kupp. 39, DeAndre Hopkins. And number 40, Brian Thomas Jr.
All right, so for me at 36, I've got Lab McConkey. 37, Brandon Cooks. 38, Deontay Johnson. 39, Rome Odunze. And number 40, Xavier Worthy. Now, I'm going to say a similar statement that I did last year. It's in the similar vein. I think you're making a huge mistake in your leagues, whether you're an auction league, snake league, it doesn't really matter. You should be leaving the draft with at least one rookie receiver. This rookie wide receiver class may go down. At least it wouldn't be a surprise based on, how, I mean, mind you, hype is hype, right? And you say it all the time. You got to see what the production is on the field. But based on paper, this could go down as one of, if not the best, rookie wide receiver class of all time. So you're talking about wanting a piece of that. In my view, that's a must. That's why I was talking about the tight ends. Why wouldn't you want one of the tight ends? This is, they said this is one of the best tight ends. Daniel Jeremiah would say the best tight end class he's seen 25, 30 years. So to me, it's like maybe you don't spend up for the guy like Malik Neighbors. Maybe you don't spend up for a guy like Marvin Harrison. There's no reason you pick who you like, right? Whether you're like Joe, you go for Brian Thomas. Whether you're like me, you go for Xavier Worthy, or both of us like Rome Odunze. To me, I think it's a big mistake for you. You should be leaving. There's so many of them. You should leave with at least one of them coming out of your drafts.
Yeah, I think that's a good tip. I mean, there's a chance that at least one of these guys are going to hit. I mean, and a lot of them are outside of Neighbors. I mean, the other ones seem to have really good opportunities. And even I know Odunze, he's got some other guys around him, but just watching preseason and, Hard Knocks and training camp, you can just tell there's a clear rapport going on between Caleb Williams and Odunze. They just seem to be seeing things the same way.
Yeah, I really like Odunze. I mean, I drafted him in our salary cap league, so I'm pretty happy about it. I hope he turns out he's not maybe getting as much buzz. Honestly, of the big three, I'd say probably buzz-wise, it probably goes Neighbors at the top, no question about it. Then, which isn't really a surprise. I mean, he was the most explosive. Then I'd say Odunze. Then lastly, I'd almost say Marvin Harrison Jr. He hasn't really gotten a lot of buzz. If anything, it's almost negative publicity with all his, his impending lawsuit or whatever with Fanatics and everything else. I know maybe fans don't care about that. But, I mean, honestly, like, you're not really seeing much.
Fans because they can't buy his jersey yet.
Right, but I'm just saying, like, that's really, I mean, you haven't really seen all that much other than that around Marvin Harrison Jr.
Yeah, I think it's just probably because he's as advertised, and I just think he's also just not as flashy as like Rome Odunze is, but he just, is a good route runner, and he's going to jump up and get those contested catches as well. So I think that's probably why he hasn't gotten a whole lot of buzz out there in Arizona.
I do think you're wrong about Worthy, though. I know you don't think Worthy, he's going to be kind of a gimmicky guy. I think he could be very good. I think people are too trying to closely associate him with Tyreek Hill, and I think that's a mistake. When Tyreek Hill came on the scene and did what he did, if you recall, that receiving core was pretty lackluster. It's a completely different offense. Even though he may have traits like Tyreek Hill, he's not going to demand the amount of output that Tyreek Hill did back in the day. So could he have flashes of him? Absolutely. Could he have a good season? Yes. I don't think he's going to be Tyreek Hill level of caliber, just pure and simply because I just don't see the opportunities there for him.
For Worthy, you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you're going to see some. I think there's going to be some downfield shots, but yeah, he's going to be one of those boomer bust guys, probably depending on the matchups.
One last player here to talk about. I did not have Cooper Kupp in my top 40. You did. Part of me wanted to. I had him missing games.
I'm really surprised you
healthy.
got Brandon Cooks over Cooper Kupp. That doesn't really add up to me.
Most people probably don't have that added up either. I mean, I could check it. I could look into it. I mean, I was quite surprised I had Brandon Cooks as high as I did, to be honest with you.
I mean, I do. I mean, obviously, Brandon Cooks has an opportunity. I think he is interesting. The only thing that scares me was just how touchdown dependent he was last year. And as we know, like touchdowns, that's hard to repeat. If he doesn't get those touchdowns, you're going to be disappointed at the end of the day. So that's the only thing that scares me, where I think Cooper Kupp is finally, he's healthy at least to start the season here. And, I am interested to see how that dynamic works out with a healthy Cooper Kupp between him and Puka.
Yeah, I guess it really depends on how explosive you think Cooper Kupp's going to be.
Right.
I guess, and that's where maybe I don't have him as explosive. If you look at his average, which is kind of what I look at, maybe people think he shouldn't, but his average per catch, not yards per game. I'm talking the average, yards per catch. His average in 2020 was at 10.5. In 2021, where he went off, it was at 13.4. Then after that, in 2022, it was at 10.8. And then in the most recent year, he was 12.5. So he's not nearly been as explosive as he was that 1 year. I've got him slotted at, I think, a respectable 11.8. So not as low as 10. Kind of splitting the gap between the 10s that he's had and the 12.5 he had before. I only have him playing 13 games instead of a full 17. He's played 12 games, 9 games, 17 games, and 15 games. Guy hasn't been able to stay healthy. Plus, Puka, I think he's passed the baton to Puka, in my opinion. And then I got Cooper Kupp getting 5 touchdowns at the end of the day. He had 5 last year in 12 games. Before that, in 9 games, he had 6 touchdowns. But, he really, you saw the offense really just focus on Puka. I do feel like I'm kind of low on him. I think he's a guy, of all the people that I've projected, I could see myself saying, yeah, maybe he deserves a little bit more, honestly. But I don't know. I just I just wonder. I know they're saying, the media says, oh, he's the healthiest he's ever been. But I feel like they always say that about people.
Yeah. Well, especially at this time during training camp, that is, to be said. It's interesting, though. I mean, I've got Kupp playing only 13 games. I've got him the same thing, 11.8 yards per reception as well. So I think the main difference is I've got him scoring 7 touchdowns to your 5.
Yeah, I mean, we're not all that different at the end of the day. But you also have him getting more targets than I do and more catches, and that's really where it boils down to.
Right. Yeah.
I have we're pretty similar, honestly, when it comes to Puka too. Maybe it's just and maybe that's where I don't have, maybe Stafford does not have, you have Stafford playing. Well, I guess I don't know. I don't know what it is. I guess we'd have to look into it. It definitely seems odd.
Yeah. Well, nevertheless, I mean, we're pretty similar. Just sometimes, especially these lower tiers, it doesn't take that many points to separate each player. And I think you're not wrong. Cooks has the potential to be that more explosive player in that Dallas Cowboys offense. with defenses looking at CeeDee Lamb, and he gets the shots down the field where that's not really Cooper Kupp's game.
I mean, at the end of the day, I'd have to look, but I would have to think that they're not all that much different.
Right. Yeah. I mean, at this point, a lot of times, it's like you're kind of splitting hairs between the points there.
So that does it for this episode where we talked about our top 40 wide receiver rankings and tiers. You get to see Steve and Joe's ranking and tiers. And if you haven't done so already, check out our other episodes. We did the same thing, but for running backs, quarterbacks, and tight ends. Thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time.